I wish this life to pass away, but life presents such possibilities each and every day.
I'm here to talk about how you can keep 100% of your labor and not have an income tax liability. Most people don't know or have never read the tax code. I just want to give you a little introduction to a talk that I'm going to do tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. That'll be the last talk that I do for the PorcFest. And it's an opportunity for you to take a look and see if you'd like to determine if you have an income tax liability, which will also deal with this whole, know your customer and all those things. You can't imagine how often you are the one that's empowering the federal government to tax you because you don't know what you're agreeing to. And I'm not talking about all of the legal things. I'm just talking about who you believe you are. As this is a common thing, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. Here we are, land of the free, home of the brave, and yet still we're contributing, or some are contributing 25 to 30% of their income. Now I'm Christopher Gronski. I'm the founder of DestinationFreedom.org. And we have classes and workshops on our website to help you determine if you actually have an income tax liability. How many here have seen Lark and Rose's the Jones Plantation? Well, this is very much like that, and that's the whole reason he put that together, was for that same reason. You can't imagine how you're the one that has empowered the federal government. These people that are dealing with being charged with money laundering, all that. Listen, money laundering is always about taxes that you're trying not to pay, okay? Well, it'd be great that if you don't have an income tax liability, you won't be charged with money laundering because they're not looking for your taxes. This is one of my favorite quotes. Let me give you a word on the philosophy of reform. The whole history of the progress of human liberty shows that all concessions made to your august claims have been born of earnest struggle. The conflict has been exciting, agitating, and all-absorbing, and for the time being, putting all others almost to silence. It must do this, or it does nothing. If there's no struggle, there's no progress. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what people will submit to, and you will have found the exact amount of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue until they're resisted with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those in whom they oppress. When I read that, I realized my endurance level was too high, and I needed to stop allowing government to encroach upon my life. One of the things that, one of these things, I'm going to move along here. Let me see if I got the right file here. One second here. Just a second. I want to make sure that I get to where I'm going on this in here, so give me 1 minute. I think that was where I was. I got to put this hard drive in a second. Okay. Sorry about that. There we are. No, I guess if you're looking at whether the federal government is taxing you against your will, the 13th Amendment talks about neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. If you believe the federal government is violating this amendment to the Constitution with involuntary servitude, how many here would be paying the income tax if you thought that you didn't have to pay it? Nobody. So you feel compelled to pay a portion of your income because it's required by law. Well, then how would the laws, the income tax laws, the tax code, be applied to people against their will? It doesn't make sense. If they are breaking the Constitution, and if they're violating your rights, then it's criminal in that action, and we should escape immediately. We should already be at war. But if that's not true, if the federal government is actually upholding the Constitution, and if the law is saying that you owe it because it's an excise tax, and that you have a choice, that is what is really happening. And you may not realize that you have a choice. And I'm not saying that the income tax is voluntary. All taxes are collected under pain of death, without exception. So how is this tax, how is it that what is the choice I'm making? And the choice you're making is who you are. Most people don't realize that there are two types of citizens in the United States. There are federal citizens and there are state citizens. This is a reality. And one of them has an income tax liability, the other does not. Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution, when the Constitution was written, it says, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. There was only one kind of citizen in America at that time, and that was state citizens, the citizens of these countries. These states are not political subdivisions of the federal government. They are separate jurisdictions. They're foreign to each other. So that's what state citizens were. When you come along to the 14th Amendment, you see that you have all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. The federal government defines U.S. citizenship by the 14th Amendment. There were citizens already in America before the 14th Amendment. They were state citizens. And so if you don't understand this jurisdiction or what power the federal government wields, you might not understand how it is you're taxed. So what are you saying, Christopher? Are you saying that the income tax is constitutional? I'm telling you the income tax is constitutional. And so, and a lot of people don't realize the power that the federal government wields. To understand federal jurisdiction is to understand the power that's been granted, and you have to understand the income tax liability for the U.S. citizen, those citizens subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So the question about the federal income tax is it constitutional? Okay, if you understand that in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the Constitution gives the federal government exclusive legislative authority in all cases whatsoever. Do you understand? That's in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. That's the law that requires you to file and pay income tax. Because in the 10 square miles, which is the District of Columbia, that geographically is federal jurisdiction. It includes bases and enclaves and all that. The federal citizen, the U.S. citizen who is subject to the jurisdiction thereof, is governed by Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. How do you reconcile federal gun laws as being constitutional when the Second Amendment says shall not infringe? Because the federal citizen is the one that is subject to federal gun laws. How does the federal government regulate drugs or food or any of these things? Because they're regulating the lifestyles of their citizens. And every time you're asked on a form, are you a United States citizen? If you don't define the term United States, if you don't know that there are multiple definitions of that term United States, you may not be knowing what you're agreeing to. When we help our clients, we do a passport process where we do the passport as a state citizen. We reject that 14th Amendment citizen that is subject to the jurisdiction thereof. We get certified copies from the Secretary of State of the United States for these processes. I've been doing this for 25, 30 years, and so we have no clients that are dealing with the IRS. Every time you see these people who are pursued by the IRS, they're doing that because they are filling out forms and paperwork as federal citizens. In New Hampshire, they ask you when you're going to be on a jury, they ask you, are you a United States citizen? I asked the court in writing, how you define the term United States, because I don't know how to answer that question. One of the Supreme Court in 1945 in the Hooven case defines the United States as three separate and distinct meanings. One of them is the states united under the Constitution. Definition 2 is the District of Columbia or the federal government. Be careful when you're saying you're a United States citizen, because you might not be. Because you see, I'm a United States citizen and I'm not a United States citizen. Both those are true. I'm not a citizen of the District of Columbia. And even when we do our work with the DMV in the state, we've got it in writing from the state. How do you define the term United States on the driver's license? The state defines it as the District of Columbia. There are federal states, and the name of the federal government is the United States. These are true things in law. I have a class online. It's called State versus Federal Citizenship: The Unknown Choice. We'll show you the tax code. We'll show you exactly what the IRS means. You may not have an income tax liability. You may be asked by the IRS, do you live or work in the United States? You can't answer that unless you know what definition of the term you're using. And the tax code is clear that the term United States and state are both the District of Columbia. I just have to show it to you so you can see it for yourself. You'll be up against what you think and how you feel more than that you'll be able to see it on paper. It's like seeing the Matrix. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So it's very exciting that you do actually have a choice. Even like immigration. Is immigration a power that's been delegated to the United States? The answer is no. How do I know that? Because in Article 1, Section 8, in the Constitution, the word immigration doesn't show up. The 10th Amendment says to the Constitution, the power not delegated to the United States by the Constitution is reserved to the states and the people. So the idea of immigration, it's a state responsibility. It's not a federal responsibility. Here's a question. Is the federal government immigrating? They are immigrating into the United States, District of Columbia. On paper, every resident alien, every alien that comes into America on paper is residing in the District of Columbia. That's what creates their tax liability. That's why the federal government doesn't want aliens who are traveling here to work, because they get nothing from that work. Because in America on paper, they're becoming residents of the District of Columbia. You just have to look up the terms in the Federal Code of Regulations. They don't hide it, it's there, and if you see it there. So the idea is that the federal government is always bringing into their jurisdiction the resident alien and the U.S. federal 14th Amendment citizen. That's what a U.S. person is, a federal citizen and a resident alien. They're all on the tax dole. And the amazing thing about it is that none of the money that goes in for the income tax goes to run the government. It goes to the central bank of interest payments and transfer payments of the debt. So you're really not supporting your government, if you will. You're actually paying the central bankers with your labor. How do you like that? You don't have to do that. Now, many of you, or some of you, may be thinking, there's no way. I don't want to be like Roger or like Ian and all. These people fill out forms as their federal citizens. They have a passport. They're declaring under penalty of perjury that they are U.S. citizens. I was at the Browns trial years ago, Ed and Elaine Brown. I saw the prosecutor, the IRS prosecutor, use their passport applications on the big screen, and the IRS prosecutor said to Elaine on the stand, let me see if I can understand. When traveling abroad, you are a U.S. citizen, but when it comes to paying taxes, you're not. And she said she didn't know there was another way to fill out their paperwork. Well, there is. You can have good paperwork. The work that we do for our clients, and we have clients all over the world, Americans all over the world that have done these processes, and that they can learn how to navigate on paperwork and fill out forms so that they're true and correct. You're filling out KYC as a federal citizen. That's what creates your tax liability. If you owe taxes and you endeavor to hide and sneak and keep that money for yourself, that's called tax evasion. If you help other people do these things, you may be charged with money laundering if you're setting up systems in which you don't pay your taxes. But if you don't have an income tax liability, you're not going to be in those trouble, okay, and having to deal with that. But you have to understand how to fill out your paperwork. This is an administrative remedy that's been hammered through the State Department, as well as we've had clients and people send paperwork to IRS. They are not having a problem with this. I remember years ago being called by the FBI about a friend of mine that I was involved with something else. And the FBI agent says, "Oh, so you don't believe that people have to pay income taxes, is that it?" I said, "Oh, no. I teach in our classes that all U.S. citizens, regardless of where they live, and resident aliens have a filing requirement and have to file and pay income taxes. The question is, what type of citizen are you? Are you a 14th Amendment citizen? That's how they define U.S. citizenship. Or are you a citizen of your state, which is based upon habitation and domicile?" So when the IRS writes to our clients and say, "Hey, we haven't seen your 1040, we just let them know we didn't incur a tax liability. I'm not a U.S. citizen nor a resident alien. We use the tax code and share with them the tax code who has those liabilities. And we've navigated the space. We don't have trouble with that. We have had clients that have had IRS issues come to us, and then we usually have to own the errors, make those corrections, and be able to tell the truth to the IRS. Sometimes people are well into owing the IRS, and the IRS is going to move down a certain pathway. And when you know that, you know exactly where how you're going to deal with them. Our clients don't have trouble with IRS. IRS is easy to deal with. It's usually a third party who believes they're in federal jurisdiction are the ones that actually harm you, and that would include banks. Okay? But we have all the paperwork for you. It's an easy process. It's not difficult. But I'll tell you, the savings can be there. This money might belong to you and your family as part of your inheritance. If you didn't have an income tax liability, would you take your money and put it in the crypto space? Listen, if you aren't a U.S. federal citizen or resident alien, you're not going to have a capital gains tax. You're not going to pay money on your crypto. It's just because you're not going to be filling out those forms. You're not going to be agreeing or saying that you're a 14th Amendment citizen. Now, the IRS has publications that talk about this subject matter, but when you read those documents, they talk about state citizenship and things like that. Be sure to carefully read that they're saying that about taxpayers. Federal citizens and resident aliens are taxpayers, one that owes an internal revenue tax. But you might not be a taxpayer. And so that's what that says. So federal citizens can't say these things that they don't have these tax liabilities, because if you're saying over here under penalty of perjury that you're a U.S. citizen, you're not going to be saying that you don't owe the tax because you're a state citizen. You must correct your paperwork for it to be true and correct. Now, tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, I have a talk here. I go into greater detail into some of the tax code, but that is a introductory talk into our class, which is about 6 or 7 hours. You can understand this. It's easy enough for children to understand. You don't have to understand the whole tax code. You just have to get to whom correct. You have to know who it's for. That's understanding federal jurisdiction. And let me tell you something about the peacefulness of this. It's great to not be fighting with IRS. Again, we agree with who they're taxing. You have the choice of whether you want to be a federal citizen or not. So, and again, another thing, we're over here at the exit lounge. Tonight at 8 o'clock, there's going to be a dance over there. And so if you feel like dancing something from the late 70s, early 80s, that good music, that'll be played over there. The music that has lyrics. Anyways, that'll be playing over there at the exit lounge for the singles or old people like me. But anyway, I just wanted to make available any questions. Coming up next is going to be Jeff Berwick, founder of the Dollar Vigilante. He's here. I haven't seen him yet, but I'm sure he's around. But he'll be coming up. He'll be coming soon. But anyway, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer a question for you. Stunned.
Okay, so for those of us who have opted in as federal citizens in the past,
Sure.
And do I need to opt out? Do I need to renounce my citizenship? And
No.
does that affect any of prior benefits? So anything's already set, like VA benefits or anything to that effect?
Well, again, you have to revisit those agreements and where you may have signed into many of those things, but we have veterans that are part of these things as well. You have the right to make corrections and of errors. So if you have new information, then yes, you're going to update that. That's why we do a passport process, because we're letting them know we have a rescission of signatures in that. We're saying, this is what I believed before, but now we're going to believe, we have something else we believe. You just bring that truth forward. So there's a number of different places that you'll make these kind of corrections. But no, once you have this truth, then you'll know how to move forward from that place forward.
And that'd be beneficial for your current employer also, if you're a firefighter.
We find,
all of it.
well, no, we find that if you're going to do this, you're not going to be employed. If you are important enough to the company, you can contract. If you're not that important, then we recommend that you start your own business so that you can be responsible. When you're an employer, you're allowing them to withhold, and they'll still withhold Social Security. This is a jurisdictional thing. If you don't have a tax liability, you're not giving them permission to withhold. You're going to contract. And we'll help you with those negotiations and things. We've talked to accountants and tax attorneys over the years. It's really quite simple. So, yeah.
Hey, Chris.
Thanks.
Do you believe it is possible that the clients that you've taken on have a tax liability? The IRS claims they have a tax liability that is so low that it's not worth their time, and so your method hasn't actually been tested because it's not lucrative enough for the IRS to go after your clients?
We have clients with million-dollar companies and people who are very affluent that have done this work. It's the same. It's not because you're too poor that the IRS doesn't see you. It isn't about that at all. This is a jurisdictional thing. We have people with major companies that have made these changes and moved out of the corporate into private. If you have a company with a tax ID number, you've chosen to do your business in the District of Columbia, you're creating your own tax liability. Why would you want to do that? You're going to pull out of the corporate. That's a beautiful thing too, even morally, is stop doing business with government. If you have a great business, why would you want to form a corporation so that you can have privileges and immunities? You can do things privately, always on your own. You just have to learn how to do that and navigate the space. And we do help our clients with that. So,
Slam dunk. Thank you.
We got just a couple of minutes.
Well, I have another question on just, do you find, or could you say that your approach is different from many of the precedents that lead forward? Like there is many cases of people claiming to be like independent citizens or state citizens that have been sued, like USD Becker, Sloan, Jones. There's just many cases of people claiming to not be federal citizens and still the U.S. prosecuting them and setting precedent that no, this is bullshit and we don't care where the government approach is going to come in from.
Well, it isn't that way, and they do call it frivolous. But you must read what they're saying, and then you would have to look at those people and coming in. If you find yourself in tax court and you're not challenging jurisdiction based upon who you are, then you're not challenging jurisdiction. You're just talking about the money. But every single one of these people have empowered the federal government on some level. If you're filling out forms as a federal citizen, you're going to have a tax liability. That's a fact. And again, you don't realize how much you're empowering the government to do this. Listen, it's an excise tax. It's based on a privilege, and so if you're accepting the privilege of being a U.S. citizen, that's going to be taxed and regulated in everything. So that's what you want to do, is come out of that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. No problem. All right. Well, thanks so much. We'll see you 11 o'clock tomorrow.